How's it going, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to this week's video. Now what I'm going to be doing today is replacing the CV joints on the V8 Montero. Now it's needed CV joints. Basically ever since I did the V8 swap, they somehow broke while the car was not driving, which is pretty interesting. It's got torn boots and stuff, so it's amazing that it didn't go far sooner. So I just picked up some of these CV joints from Rock Auto. Rock Auto's got a lot of good stuff. I'm not sponsored or anything, of course, because I have like 180 subscribers. Make sure to like and subscribe, and maybe I will end up getting a Rock Auto sponsorship. So, first thing you got to do, jack the car up, take the tires off, jack it up from the center, get both tires off the ground. I'm going to see if I can do this without taking the ball joints or anything off, but I have a feeling I'm going to have to do that. So yeah, jack the car up, get the wheels off. Definitely looks like we're going to have to take the upper and lower ball joint off and get this whole knuckle off, which means taking the steering arm off, the caliper, all that stuff, maybe the shock. So I'm going to do all that on both sides pretty much, but I'm just going to work on the driver's side for now. That way I can always reference. We'll get this side done and then move on to the next side. I'm going to get these caliper bolts off first. It's just the 17, and usually takes a little sledgehammer. Yeah, this is going to need some grease, I think. That one came off easier. The trick to getting these things off and on is when you put the bolts in, you want to grease them up real nice. And then they'll come out easy later on. So we'll get that all taken off. This guy's going to be a pain, I think. Not too bad. Oh yeah. Now, since I have a manual hub, I'm just going to keep it in the free position, and we're going to take the hub out, take the whole manual hub assembly out, and then I'm going to undo. There's a little C-clip in there that I got to undo, so we'll take this thing apart real quick, and yeah. Can also take a look at the manual hub. This is like the cheapest manual hub I could find. It was like 45 bucks for both of them. Looks to be doing pretty good, actually. Nothing out of the ordinary for one of these. So looks pretty good, and grease is good. Gasket held up. Not bad. Went ahead and I took the C-clip off, and I'm going to put this hub back on, and just to keep it as one piece and less parts to deal with laying around. And then after I get this back on, I'm going to, let's see how I should do this. Probably undo the upper ball joint first, and then I'll undo the lower ball joint, and we'll rotate it out. We'll undo the tie rod end first, and then those. And then it should be good to get the CV out. Maybe the shock might have to come out. We'll see. It's pretty easy, just one bolt really. Get it out of the way more or less. Just did the tie rods a couple years ago, so this should come off pretty easy. It still looks really good, actually. Get these cotter pins out. These are my welding pliers. These are my favorite pliers. So keep track of these cotter pins. I think this is like a 3/4 or something weird. No. Maybe it's a 17. Nope. 19. 19. So I think that might be because these are like Moog. I believe these are Moog tie rods. So should come off with no problem here. Ooh. Oh, I couldn't be more wrong. Okay, well, we're gonna hit some WD-40 on that and we'll get that broken loose. Slap the impact on it. Like butter. There we go. Now, I'm sure all you guys know the trick. Put the castle nut inside or back on there, except upside down. Right, get that all the way on to where it's flush with the bolt. Hit the side a couple times. The knuckle side. And give her a few whacks. Still didn't want to come out. Keep hitting the knuckle. Just dislodges it. There we go. Good whack. That's all it takes. So tie rod end comes out. Still not the greatest. Might be replacing that, but for now it's okay. I don't really mind. Not feeling too much in the steering. Just feels like it always has. Oh, now we do the ball joints. Same idea. I probably won't record it. It's going to take me a while. But same idea. You're just going to undo the bolt, cotter pin, all that. Flip the castle nut upside down, start hammering away. And when you do the lower ball joint, or the upper ball joint, you can get a jack underneath here. That'll make it a little bit easier. Underneath the lower control arm, just to hold it for a little bit. That'll make it a bit easier. So yeah. Got the upper ball joint loose, so the knuckle's kind of loose down in there, and then I'm about to do the lower ball joint. It's a 24 millimeter socket. We'll just impact it off. We'll just get the impact on it and rip it off, and then I'm going to start hammering. So the way I got the upper control arm off is I just hammered right on the upper control arm with the nut still on there. That way it doesn't fling up or anything falls off. And I'm going to do the same with the lower ball joint. I'm going to hammer down right here. It's probably around here or on the knuckle somewhere. And it should just pop off. Pull the OEM shaft out of here. Sometimes it can get kind of seized in there and not want to come out. But mostly because of this little like hog ring thing they have on the end. That can get jammed in there pretty good. But mine came right out. And this doesn't look to be lubricated with anything other than gear oil, so that's how the new one's going to go in, just with gear oil. And then of course we're going to lube this whole shaft and put her back. So here's the difference between the OEM CV axle and this cheap aftermarket one. I just bought the cheap one because if it breaks, it breaks. I'll just replace it. It's not a big deal. And I've had pretty good luck with stuff like this. A lot of people saying that the locking hubs I bought were gonna break like instantly or something. Nothing. I mean, they're totally fine. Granted, I haven't had them very long, but we'll see. These will probably do okay. If they do ever break, I'll probably just buy OEM ones. But right now, at the moment, I just get these ones because shipped fast and a lot cheaper than OEM ones. But I mean, material differences. I mean, it's probably a little different from 25 years ago to today. It's pretty similar everywhere else. This looks a little beefier, possibly. Yeah, looks good. Also, side note, I was pounding on this lower ball joint for like 30 minutes, and that thing would not budge. So I just decided to take the bolts out. I wouldn't even bother next time with trying to get that off. Just take the bolts out. It's so much easier. Comes off like nothing. So yep, ball joints. This is a pretty decent ball joint. It's still tight. This one a little loose, but you know, I'll replace that too at some point. It's no big deal. But for now, we're just gonna put the CV joints in and be good with it. just went and got a tub of wheel bearing, high temp disc brake and wheel bearing grease. I feel like all grease is pretty much the same. They just put special names on it. High temp's good. I mean, it's not going to get that hot. It's a CV axle, but lubrication is the main thing, and if it's for wheel bearings, it's a lot of lubrication. So yep, so we're going to grease up the replacement shaft and slap it in there. This side's not getting greased because it just had regular old diff oil on it, so that goes right into the diff and should be good. Alright, I had a change of heart. Yeah, if you unbolt this lower ball joint, definitely take it out of the knuckle, because I can't get this ABS wire out. I could care less about ABS. My ABS light is already on, so I don't really care. I would just cut that. I almost did, but then I took a couple whacks at the lower ball joint on this and got it out, because this thing is so stupid to put in there. You basically have to get it perpendicular to the lower control arm and then like wedge it in. And this thing is pretty heavy, so you're trying to hold this and like wiggle this into some weird position to fit inside the lower control arm. So I say to get it off, you take these bolts out, and then to put it on, you have to somehow get the lower ball joint out of there, hammer it out, whatever you have to do. Do that. Don't try and put it in still connected to this. It's way too hard. That's my little tip. Okay, once you're at this point where you have the knuckle on the lower ball joint down here, see, and you're not even close to the upper ball joint, you're going to want to get the jack underneath of the lower control arm and just jack it up until you get to the upper control arm and the bolt in there. So here's the setup I got going. A little floor jack. You could probably do it with one floor jack. You'd be a little bit less safe, but so got one floor jack under the control arm, basically at its max height, and then another floor jack in the middle. I kind of let it pivot on this jack stand. That jack stand is doing nothing. So yeah, let it pivot on this jack stand just to put more weight on this control arm, so you can lift it up, because before I was lifting it and it would lift the whole car up, sort of. It wouldn't go up high enough to get the upper control arm. So did that, and now I got the upper control arm and the lower ball joint on there. I'm going to slide the cotter pin in there, bolt up all these ABS little brackets, and then tighten everything up, cotter pins and everything, and then we can move on to the next side. One thing, since I did put this cover back on, I'm going to take it off and put the C-clip in there. So I'll probably do that right now, because everything's pretty much in the place it needs to be. Yep, let's do that. Now the passenger side is going to be very similar. You're going to want to take the brake caliper off, undo the C-clip in here, take the tie rod end off, and the only thing different between the driver's and the passenger side is that the passenger side CV, if you can see that, is bolted on. It's bolted on back there, see, with 4 bolts. So that's going to be the only difference. Alright, once you get this castle nut off the upper ball joint, you're going to want to flip it over again, upside down. Go ahead and put it. This one actually you probably don't have to put upside down, but you do it anyway. anyways, because I might end up hitting that just for fun. And you want to get the jack underneath here again. I almost forgot what you want to do. Undo those 4 bolts on the diff side of the CV joint before you take the upper ball joint off. Alright, little tip to undo that CV joint. You're going to want to put the tire back on the ground. So I'll probably do this before you even take the tire off. Just go ahead and loosen those 4 bolts in the back. Next, you're going to want to go ahead and take the C-clip out of the hub. Some kits or some CV joints come with the C-clips. Mine did. So don't worry about messing it up. All right. Alright guys, the C-clip wasn't even on the axle, so could move it in and out, I guess. Maybe that's why it was making noise, but this CV joint's pretty wrecked anyways. So now you can take the upper ball joint out, put the jack underneath it, and start hitting it with the hammer. I'll show you guys how I'm hitting the upper control arm. I'm going to smack here, right on the knuckle where it goes into the upper ball joint. You're going to hit that pretty hard, and then you're going to hit up on this. Boom. Hit up on the, try and get those ABS wires out of the way. Hit up on the upper control arm, and it should pop out. This one popped out in like 2 hits, so pretty easy. I'm going to undo those bolts on the diff side all the way so it can come out of there. So the reason I put the jack under it is because the only thing that's holding the lower control arm and everything from going down is the bump stop up here on the upper control arm. So you get a jack under there so it can't go down. The upper control arm is probably going to spring up pretty good when it comes all the way off, so just be ready for that. And the knuckle is probably going to want to fall down. There. See, it wasn't too bad. That was nothing. The other side kind of jumped more than that. So keep track of this castle nut. You're going to need it unless you're replacing all this stuff. Alright, so I left off yesterday with the upper ball joint disconnected, and pretty much all I gotta do is undo the lower ball joint. However way I end up doing that is either undoing the bolts, or if it pounds off, that's great. So we'll try pounding it off first and go from there. Alright, now I got it to this point. We had the lower ball joint in here. Then we can go ahead and bolt on the CV axle in the back there, and then we can grease this end up and put the knuckle back on. So I'm going to put this in here. It just slides in. Back in there. Line up the holes. And we're good. I got to use the nuts over there and get that tightened up. Alright, got the upper control arm bolted onto this knuckle. I'm going to keep the jack up there while I tighten it up. Slide the cotter pin in, you can let the jack down, put the brakes on, put the tie rod on, you're pretty much good to go. Almost forgot to put the C-clip in here. Mine came with this kind of C-clip, so you need to use split ring pliers. Try and pull the axle out this way a little bit, and just slide it over. Should go right into place. There's a little notch in there for it. Looks like it went in. always do when I'm putting on the brake calipers is really grease up these bolts. It'll make it a hell of a lot easier to take out, which I guess when I did the brakes last time I didn't end up doing that, but I'm definitely going to do it this time. So this bolt with the little notch in it goes on the bottom, and then the regular one goes on the top. What I do is I just dip it in there all the way to the threads pretty much. Just get a good coating on it. You don't need a ton, but it'll help. And then you can just slide it in. It goes in pretty nice. Screw it all together. It'll come out a lot easier when you need to do the brakes next time. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this video. Just doing a little bit of maintenance on the Montero. And I know like 90% of you guys aren't subscribed. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for some more videos on my cars.